talks coming up on this, so talk about the training. Gentlemen. Morning, everybody. I'm glad there's one lady here. Some nice testosterone.
Ladies. I don't know. Is the right word?
Well, thank you. I want to thank everyone, all the media, for coming out this morning as we talk about our approach, our new approach, and the fact that today is a day that the ordinance that many of you have reported on goes into effect. And we do want to introduce our approach to address encampments in public and private places as a result of this new camping ordinance. And before we do, I want to personally thank the council for supporting this ordinance as it was brought forth. And in particular, thank the council members that are with me today, councilmembers Maxwell, Bredefeld, and Arias, for their courage and their boldness in bringing forth an ordinance that we know oftentimes can be viewed controversial. These new proactive measures will continue to allow us as a city to offer help to our unhoused residents who choose to accept it, and provide police officers with the tools necessary, as well as our outreach workers, for people who refuse those services and continue to violate the ordinance. And when I say continue to violate the ordinance, there are unfortunately individuals out there that have become very, very defiant and refuse to follow the direction or request that is given to them by police officers and or outreach workers. Our overall intent is to protect our businesses and our residents, as well as at the same time getting help to the people who are in need of it. That is our homeless population, our unsheltered population, who are out there, quite frankly, many days in inhumane conditions. In a moment, I'll explain the approach that we're going to take as a city that is laid out in this graphic. But first, I want to share what we've accomplished so far as a city and collectively with the partners that we have with us. Because oftentimes I think it's overlooked. And I hear far too often from certain folks in our community, sometimes advocates, that say we never do anything for the unsheltered population, which is the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, since 2021 through March, we don't have the current data, we have collectively housed 7,100 people in emergency shelter within the city of Fresno. Of those, 49% have safely exited a life of homelessness and have either moved into permanent housing or been reunited with their family. And that's just not the city of Fresno efforts, but that's the efforts of our partners like the Fresno Mission with Matt Dildine, who's with us today, the Poverello House, Turning Point, Marjorie Mason Center, and many other. And in fact, over the last 6 months, I would venture to say we've far exceeded another 1,000 people. So we are well over 8,000 people that have been placed into emergency shelter within our city. In addition to that, we have 2 mobile showers that we purchased as a city. We rotate those showers throughout the city, the various council districts, and we provide over 175 showers to our unsheltered population every single week free of charge. Our UCSF's mobile health clinic, which the city of Fresno helped launch, has provided medical services to more than 2,400 unhoused patients since it began. That includes health screenings, flu shots, prescribed medication, and much, much more for people that are very, very vulnerable. These services are brought to those who may not have transportation in order to get to a doctor or medical facility, and these services are completely free for them. And that is something that we're very, very proud of as a city in terms of approaching this population in a compassionate way. Our Heart Outreach team proactively and humanely offers to connect people with services and shelter. We spend over $15 million a year as a city on services that we provide at our shelters. That's shelters that we operate and own, as well as those from Fresno Housing. But that's a significant amount of money that we spend each year providing services to these folks. We currently have 40 outreach workers Those are people that go out along with our police officers, the front lines. They're the ones that are offering services and shelter to the folks that are in our community. And I'm happy to say that in general, when our outreach workers approach folks, they're about 75% of them are accepting services and shelter. And again, we work in partnership with the Fresno Mission, with the Paparello House, with Turning Point, and a number of others to deliver these services. And that does not include all of the efforts that we have seen and will see in the future at City Center, which I know Matt Dildine will speak about as well, and something we're very, very proud of in our city, something that I think is going to be the example across our nation. But even with all these efforts, about 30% of the unsheltered population continue to refuse or accept services. And many of them are uncooperative and in many cases defiant and continue to occupy public spaces in violation of the ordinance. Oftentimes this happens near businesses, near schools, but in particular businesses, harming their ability to make a living and generally hurting our overall economy. But they also happen in our public spaces like parks, as well as in areas surrounding our where our shelters are. Again, creating a negative environment for the people who live there. Oftentimes, this is something that we see on a daily basis. So that is why there is a need for a new ordinance. And that ordinance is in place and again initiated by councilmembers Maxwell, Bredefeld, and Arias. The most recent ordinance shored up some of the vagueness of the previous ordinance that we passed in 2017 and added much more clarity. The new ordinance will give our officers the ability to remove people from public places if they are defiant or habitual offenders, regardless of whether shelter beds are available. I do want to say something about our shelter beds. We are starting to see more and more of those shelter beds become available on a daily basis. And let me tell you why. We recently learned that when people are in the emergency shelters and they have been receiving services and they are prepared to go out into a permanent housing facility on their own, and they have available funding in order to do that and perhaps even a voucher, and there is permanent housing available of some sort. There are folks in our shelters today that are refusing to take advantage of those facilities or permanent housing because they're holding out for something better. We have initiated a new program in each of our shelters that once they have sufficient funding, they've received the services necessary, and there is a place identified for them to move into, they have 30 days in which to exit. And we're going to hold firm to that because we have a lot of people that are still out there on our streets today that would love to be in emergency shelters. And as these folks move out into permanent housing, it will create more bed space for those folks that are on the street. So ultimately, this ordinance provides our city with an option to help our small businesses and neighborhoods. It's part of a multifaceted approach, not only to help our businesses, but to continue to help our unhoused population. So I just want to go through how this is going to work. It is called the Treatment First program. The ordinance says that for people that are arrested by officers, they could be taken to jail, and the court system is encouraged to seek out a diversion. That's specifically in the ordinance. Unfortunately, that could take many, many months before a person gets before the appropriate body and for that to occur, or a judge. So we want to have some front-end diversion as well. And again, we're going to be focused on sensitive areas that we've identified, problematic locations, and uncooperative people. The first, our outreach workers are going to offer them services and shelter like they always do if they're in a public place. And if they do not want the services and shelter, they'll move them along. However, if they are habitual offenders of the ordinance and they're uncooperative, then there's going to be a different approach as a result of the ordinance. They also have a decision point where if a person is a danger to themselves or others, unable to care for their personal safety, they can continue to be placed under a 5150 hold and taken to the hospital. And fortunately, we're starting to see more and more beds come available, mental health beds in the county. However, if in fact they are not willing to receive the services and the shelter, and they are habitual offenders, there is an opportunity for officers, should they choose, to arrest that person. But even with the arrest, it doesn't mean that they're going to be taken and booked into Fresno County Jail. We want to give them a front diversion opportunity, and that is through a Treatment First program. Treatment First would mean that one of our service providers in the community, should beds be available, can be taken there for treatment. If they choose that approach, the police report would be held in abeyance, and if they completed a program as determined by the treatment provider, that report would be disposed of. However, if they walk away from a treatment program, then in fact they have the option to be booked into Fresno County Jail for continually violating this ordinance. This is a program that was initiated in the police department many years ago in partnership with a mission for people who were arrested in possession of drugs. They had the opportunities to go to a treatment program in lieu of jail, and it was a very, very successful program. We're hoping this program will be very successful as well. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over at this time to Councilmember Maxwell to provide his comments, and then after that it will be Councilmember Bredefeld, and then Arias, and then Matt Dildine, and then I'm going to have our police chief come up and talk about the actual training that has been provided to our officers, a significant number in a relatively short period of time, to make sure they all understand this new approach. Tyler?
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning, everybody. From the City Council's perspective, I really, again, want to just emphasize the amount of resources we as a body have invested into our homeless population. The City of Fresno has invested nearly $500 million into our homeless population over just the past 4 years that I've been on the City Council, and Mayor Dyer has been in office. That's $500 million with a B, into a community that makes up less than 1% of our city's entire population. I would reckon that's a bigger investment than we've made into any other local population, and understandably so, given how difficult homelessness can be to overcome. It is also important to remember, however, that the nearly $500 million, the nearly 900 shelter beds, the hundreds of subsidized affordable housing units, and the vast amount of resources we offer only constitute the city's contribution towards this issue. Those numbers don't account for the major investments made by the county, the state, the federal government, local churches, nonprofits, and the Fresno Housing Authority. Tackling a community-wide issue takes the efforts of more than just a single local government agency, and it would be a mistake to believe that the only way out of homelessness is through a government-sponsored solution. We will continue to offer these services and build upon them where we can going forward. It is our hope that folks will accept that help. Our main objective here is to help people in times of need. Compassion must continue to be key. And over the past 4 years, as Mayor mentioned, hundreds of folks experiencing homelessness have accepted the help offered to them and have successfully been able to turn their lives around. Unfortunately, now at the end of every day, when I review our homeless response team's daily reports, I see the vast majority of homeless individuals sadly declining the services that we are offering to provide them. I've been a proud Democrat for most of my adult life. I believe government has a duty to meet people halfway where possible. However, if folks are unwilling to meet us halfway on a solution and are unwilling to find a solution outside of government, we must seek other courses of action. Our city parks, sidewalks, bus stops, and schools are meant to be enjoyed by the public and not just an exclusive few who refuse to seek treatment. I look forward to continuing our city's partnership alongside folks like Matt Dildine with the Fresno Rescue Mission, as well as our many other community partners. If you sincerely want help, we sincerely want to help you, and we will get creative to find a way to help you. And again, if it takes more than one time going through the cycle, we understand, and we will still be there to help you if you seek the city's help. You are not required to accept our help, but I hope that you will find help somewhere, because our children's parks and our local small businesses will no longer be available to you. Thank you. I'll introduce at this time my colleague, Councilmember Bredefeld.
Thank you. The city of Fresno has worked extremely hard for many years to help those who are homeless. We've spent hundreds of millions of dollars, as Councilmember Maxwell said, creating housing. We've converted what were once rundown, crime-infested hotels into shelters and apartments for those who want and need them. We've provided basic necessities, support services, medical care, and other essential services to those who wanted them and wanted to get off the streets. Under Mayor Dyer's leadership, we removed homeless who were dangerously camping on highways, and now our highways and embankments are cleaner and look much better. We absolutely want to help those people who are homeless, and we truly want to help them to change their lives and their lifestyle. There's plenty of help available, and the city will do everything they can to assist those people, just like we've been doing for many years. But there is a subculture of the homeless who want that toxic lifestyle, regardless of the help offered to them, who want to continue to use drugs and alcohol, who create unsafe, unhealthy, and sometimes dangerous conditions for other law-abiding citizens, our constituents, who feel that they can hang out on streets, median islands, sidewalks, walking trails, and parks, or wherever else they choose, and even private property. As a retired clinical psychologist who worked for over 30 years in private practice, worked in outpatient and hospital settings treating people with drug addictions, I have a unique perspective on this issue and can tell you that until someone is truly and sincerely committed to getting treatment for their drug issues and mental illness, you can't help them. This is unfortunately where we find many of the people chronically living on the streets, often refusing help for their drug addictions and mental illness. But the fact is, every person is accountable for the choices they make in life, including those who have refused help and choose to live on the streets. Those who also choose to engage in drugs, criminal behavior, harass business owners, or create unsafe and unhealthy conditions in our community must be held accountable. It is our job and responsibility as elected officials of the City of Fresno to ensure our community is vibrant, healthy, and safe. It's also our job to ensure the rights of residents and businesses are respected and protected. This ordinance and other ordinances that we've recently enacted will assist us in meeting those responsibilities. And once again, we provide and offer those who want help to be able to receive it. And again, the City of Fresno has done much to help, and we want to continue to help. And with that, I'd like to introduce Councilmember Miguel Arias.
Thank you. This is somewhat of a more personal issue for me, as I've shared in the past. I had two of my siblings both be homeless. One of them for 10 years, another one for 4 years. Both of them required quite a bit of help from the family, and then eventually the family said, "Enough is enough. You're not willing and able to help yourself, so we're out." And they both ended up in the city streets, one in Fresno and one in Alaska. It took one 10 years before he was ready. Now he's sober, fully employed, and living his life to the best. Took another one 4 years, and now she's sober and fully employed and reunited with her kids. As the councilmember for District 3, I can speak to the fact that we are the headquarters of homeless services, not only for the city, but for the county and the valley. And I continue to visit those shelters on a weekly basis. But I also continue to walk by and drive by on Olive and Belmont and Palm to see folks openly engage in drug use while at a city bus stop where kids are waiting for the bus to go to school. I see our folks openly engaging in drug use in front of a school entrance during a school day. I see them tearing up neighborhoods and taking all their belongings and their property. I see them actively engaging in human trafficking and drug trafficking. I see them openly abusing the vulnerable elderly that are unsheltered. I see quite a bit of them who are not ready, willing, or sometimes able to seek the help that they need. And my message to those grown adults who have been engaging in open drug use for years and been rejecting our help, or have gone through our shelters and are still not on their feet, it's time for you to get help. This, in my view, is your last chance to accept the city's help for drug treatment. If not, you should be expecting that you're going to experience your withdrawal symptoms in a county jail. Enough is enough. The unhoused and the homeless have rights, but they don't have any more rights than kids going to school, than families enjoying a city park, and residents who are trying to keep their neighborhood clean and safe. It's time for them to get the help or expect to go through withdrawals in a county jail. With that, I'll introduce Matt Dildine.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. As Councilman Arias said, my name is Matt Dildine. I'm the CEO for the Fresno Mission. I'm excited to be here today. If there was, among the many facts about homelessness, if there was one fact that I think to me is at the top of my list that I wish just like everybody would know, that it would be common knowledge, it's this. About half of the chronic homeless, about half of those that are on the streets, that have been there for an extended period of time with a disability, have a condition, a word that I'm not very good at pronouncing, so I won't hear, but it's a condition that's actually literally telling their brain that there's nothing wrong with them and they don't need help. It's their brains, the way that it operates, the synapses in their brains are telling them that they're okay, that they don't need help. And when I think about the tragedy behind that, it's like somebody that's struggling with, say, an eating disorder, right? Who looks in the mirror, who's someone who's 85 pounds and looks in the mirror and sees somebody who is 285 pounds, right? And as much as you say, no, you're skinny, you're skinny, you're skinny, right? That's not what their brain is telling them. But the answer can't just be, give you food, I'll give you food, I'll give you food. Now, sometimes the compassionate thing to do is to have interventions. If you look back at the statistics for California, you'd see a trend, and it looks like a hockey stick. And if you go back to around 2000, 2014, 2015, if you go back the prior 7 years, the homelessness rate in California was actually declining by double the national average. And then something happened. We hockey sticked up, and then we saw the highest rate of increase in the country. But one of the things that happened, among several things that happened, was that California really went away from prioritizing treatment as a homeless intervention. Is this the only intervention? No. But it made drugs, but in that time it passed Prop 47, which decriminalized most drugs. It made them readily available. It made all the things that are possible on the street to happen. It's easier to deal drugs. And what happened is we saw a spike in people who were wrecked with addiction. And so now we live at a time when California is going back to recognizing we need a diversity of options to really help, which includes interventions. When our drug courts were full, we had less homeless on the street. Mm-hmm. What really excites me is not about, hey, penalizing somebody for being homelessness. What excites me is the life change that can happen. Every single day I walk around my campus and I see people whose lives have changed. Today, people will call from jail desperately wanting a life change. I get to see that. For people that are in our program, they get to enroll as Fresno City College students. Every single person who goes through the program will always, 100% will leave with a job, a GED, and a place to live. People who are once terrible fathers become reconciled with their children. Mothers who have lost their children to CPS will see their children reunited. Now, is that the case in every case? No. But does that happen? Absolutely. Does it happen in cases that you thought were too far gone to the lost causes? It absolutely does. Life change can happen. Our role as the Fresno Mission is just to be one of a number of service providers that is here just to offer help to the city. We have no other role besides just being an open door, trying to provide services to offer that life change. We were looking back, as Mayor Dyer mentioned, this actually happened years ago, prior to some of the changes in the laws. And we were just looking over some of the statistics. We saved the city of Fresno $200,000 on an annual basis just in the booking fees, just in the fees that the city has to pay to the county for the jailing fees, that because that people could come into our programs, come into our facilities, that we didn't have to pay. That was in addition to the millions of dollars that we avoided, that the taxpayers avoided by having people stay in jails, or all the other treatment programs that become necessary when somebody is in jail or in prison. But the main thing is what we see is we just see people who were totally lost, who were at rock bottom, changed their lives to live according to the abundant life that God desired from them from the very beginning. And we're just happy to provide that service again.
Thank you, Matt. Well said. And if there's anything people walk away from this news conference with, I want it to be that we're not trying to take away a person's freedom as a result of an arrest. We're trying to restore them to some form of normalcy, where that normalcy is not drug addiction, alcohol addiction, mental health, and living on our streets in inhumane conditions. But there are times when people have to get uncomfortable before they can get comfortable. I can't tell you how many times over the course of my career in law enforcement where I've had people come back later and say, thank you for arresting me. I was out on the streets, addicted to drugs. I got into jail, into a program, and my life turned around, and today I'm a productive citizen. That is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to be someone that's out there arresting people and taking away their freedoms and being unmerciful. Just the opposite. We want to help people. But in order to help people, sometimes there has to be some tough love. And that's what we're trying to incorporate here. And with that, I want to introduce our police chief so that she can talk about the overall efforts of the police department in dealing with this and the training that I've asked to be provided to our officers so that we have consistency in how we approach people that are unsheltered in our community. Mindy?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Since the discussion began about the anti-camping ordinance, we've been busy at your Fresno Police Department, busy talking at the leadership level. How are we going to change the culture and make sure that from the top to the bottom we understand what our city's looking to do? And it's not to become cruel or unusual or to make arrests and clear the streets with sweeps. It's to be less tolerant of individuals who are causing problems to our law-abiding citizens and businesses, but to also provide compassion and a chance for them to change their lives if that's what they so desire to do. Besides just speaking and starting to change that culture from top to bottom at every one of our staff meetings on what we expect our officers to do and the attitude we expect them to enforce this new ordinance, we've employed a new training course for all of our police officers out on patrol, several hours going over training on what we expect so that it's clear. The officers know when, and they're confident when they need to make an arrest, and they're comfortable offering other services when those are important or when those are appropriate. For instance, just yesterday I read several individuals were contacted at a rather large encampment at Shields and Maroa. They said to our officers who were there to talk to them that they'd been homeless for just 3 weeks. And they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what was available. And our officers provided them assistance and got them to services. And that's exactly what we're going to do today now that the ordinance is in effect. Nothing's changed on the part where we're offering services first for people who are open to them and not creating a dangerous situation for the public or our school children or anyone else. Beyond that, every patrol officer, every police officer to that matter, undergoes crisis intervention training in the academy. They undergo different various aspects of that and de-escalation at every single training course that we offer at the Fresno Police Department. And then starting, I believe it's next week, every officer will go through another, I believe it's 8-hour course on crisis intervention for patrol officers specifically, and with this ordinance in mind, to ensure that we're trying to offer the best services we can and deal with people in the most compassionate but appropriate way possible when we encounter them on the street. So you can be assured that we've taken this very seriously and that we've, as leadership at Fresno PD and our elected officials, have done our very best to make sure every patrol officer out there handling these calls, not to mention our PD Heart team that deals with our homeless individuals on a daily basis, understand the mission of this city, and that's to help get people the help they need and only take them to jail if that's the last resort to preserve the peace of everyone else trying to live and work in this city peacefully. So thank you. Mayor, turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Chief. And I, too, had the opportunity to meet with all of our outreach workers, 40 of those, and the ones from the police department, as well as those who are non-law enforcement, and to make sure that they all had an understanding of what the expectations were of this council and of the administration in terms of how we carry out this approach. And again, there can be accountability with compassion, and that's what we're going to deliver. And I think the people of Fresno deserve it. The business owners deserve it. The residents deserve it. The people who visit our parks deserve it. The people who are going to and from school deserve it. And that is what we aim to deliver as a city. With that, we'll open up to any questions you might have. Tim?
What's the current shelter capacity of emergency shelter beds here in the city of Fresno?
We currently have about 840 shelter beds that on any given day, the numbers fluctuate in terms of how many are vacant. We would have 5 or 6 people rotate out every day, generally. Those numbers are going to grow as we put in our 30-day exit strategy, and you're going to see more and more beds available in this city for people who are willing to take advantage of services.
So given that, you mentioned, the ordinance mentions that these people will be asked to move along or asked to accept services even in the absence of available shelter beds. What do we anticipate in terms of any sort of backlog of shelter availability, shelter beds availability?
Well, we're certainly working on any type of, when you say backlog, of the number of people that want into services. There are folks out there that we definitely know want services, or want shelter, I should say, and haven't been able to provide that to them. But as long as people are cooperative and they're not disruptive to businesses and neighborhoods, and they're out there defiant, those aren't the people that we're going to be focused on. We're focused on those folks that are habitual offenders, people that are occupying sensitive areas, people that have generated repeated calls for service to the police department. The people that quite often are the ones that are the most problem to businesses and neighborhoods. Those are the ones we're focused on. And if those people continue to do what they do, then we have to treat them differently. Yeah, let me.
I just want to, real quick, Mr. McCloskey, I'm going to extend off Mayor Dyer's previous response to Tim. We've had, I know, scenarios in my district where we've tried to get folks sheltered. In the rare occasion where there might not be one available at one of our city-sponsored shelter beds, our service providers have been so accommodating in helping find things like hotel or motel rooms to place these families until a city-sponsored shelter bed opens up, and then we're able to move folks over there for a longer period of time. But as I mentioned in my remarks, if folks want help, we will get creative together and come up with the solution to find a person or a family a place to shelter themselves until something opens up. It's pretty rare that that happens. Most of the time we're able to move them into a city-sponsored location, but in the rare chance that does come up, we have gotten creative and found solutions. Thanks.
On that habitual offender question,
Go ahead.
what are you specifically talking about the offense? Is it the current no sit, no sleep, no lie ordinance that was in effect in July of last year? Or what does habitual offender mean? And also, now that more and more unhoused folks are going on the street because they can't afford their rent, will the city support rent control and, you know, some kind of subsidies for rent to help people that can't afford the rent, like Social Security recipients, et cetera?
To your question on rent control, I'm open to the discussion of rent control. That's a policy discussion. That policy has not proven to work across the board for the population that we're talking about. A lot of cities that have rent control have a much worse homeless and unhoused crisis than we do in the city of Fresno. Clearly, it is part of the conversation, but I also want to address Tim's point too. The city doesn't have the legal obligation to provide people free housing, free utilities, and free food for life. The only ones that have that legal obligation are parents to minors. And even in that scenario, kids are expected to follow rules. And some advocates and some folks have asked cities and governments to become the parent of thousands of adults without any condition of those adults changing their behavior, but simply to get free housing, free food. And I can tell you that I have had a lot more pushback and frustration from working families working 2 or 3 jobs to pay the higher rent, while somebody else gets to give free food and free shelter for years without expecting them to even work a single day during that time. So what I would ask folks for, if you're unsheltered in the city of Fresno and you've been unsheltered for years, refusing the help that we've offered, then you need to go and seek help with your own family or in another city, because our patience has run out and our resources are limited, and they've also run out too.
Thank you. I do want to touch on rent control, Bob. I don't want to avoid that. I just spent the last few days in Boston, and a significant portion of it was with other mayors and people from Harvard who had put together a study, the Pew Institute, and there is no feeling that rent control is the solution to this, because states and cities that have incorporated rent control, I believe in Washington and a number of others, it's not been successful. What has been proven successful is when you increase the supply of housing that will meet or exceed the demand for housing, and that you can create that housing in an affordable fashion. And that doesn't necessarily mean subsidized housing. It could mean manufactured housing that you can build at a much cheaper rate, as well as build it in a much timelier fashion. Those are the things that are starting to be proven effective. We're doing that in Fresno. We're building our first manufactured housing project in Northwest Fresno. We broke ground in April. We're going to be cutting the ribbon on that project in December. That's how fast we're doing it, and it's coming in nearly 40% below, and it's targeting folks that are foster youth and timing out of the foster youth program. In the next 12 months, we will have 1,500 affordable housing units coming online in the city of Fresno. Those are projects that we've been involved in, subsidized, facilitated, etc. That's not to mention some of the market rate housing we have coming online as well. So increasing the supply is what we're going to do. I can tell you from the first 5 years of my administration with what's in the pipeline compared to the previous 5 years, we will have an increase in affordable housing in our city by 1,644%. That is the answer, and that's the solution, and we're pursuing that feverishly.
How is this any, I'm still having trouble figuring out how this is any different from what you announced before. I mean, the city's not required to send services, right? So then is this different than when you announced the solution, I mean, the anti-capping ordinance before? How is it different?
So there is some vagueness. I don't know if anybody in here wants to clarify, Tyler, or somebody, on the clarity and vagueness of this ordinance versus the one we passed in 17. Is that what you're speaking of?
Yeah. Was this like an order of operations?
And then this I can talk about separately, but I can let Councilmember Maxwell speak about that.
Are you speaking about the 2017 ordinance?
About how this is different than the anti-capping
Sure.
ordinance.
Go ahead, Mayor. I think you got this one.
Yeah, so the ordinance gives us the ability to actually physically take custody of a person if they choose not to accept services or shelter. As part of that, taking a person into physical custody, at that point in time, oftentimes they may choose a different path. Do you want to go to jail, or would you like to go to a treatment program? And it is amazing how many people at that point have an awakening moment and decide, I will seek out treatment versus going to jail. So that is the difference with the Treatment First program. We did not have that.
So you're not required to give services, but you will be. You're not requiring yourselves the first officer. You don't have to have shelter beds. I mean, because like Arias said before, like Miguel said before, you're not required to offer shelter beds, right?
Correct.
What kind of coordination are you working with the county in terms of getting treatment? Because county resources are probably.
Well, very much so, and more so. I think what happened back in 2021, whenever the state started direct funding to cities through the Home Key program, which allowed us to purchase motels, and as well as what's called HAP dollars for flexible dollars for services, as well as the encampment resolution funds. All of those dollars were coming directly to cities. As a result of that, cities started getting more involved in social service type programs for our unsheltered population, housing them, providing services, still partner with the county, but the city started taking on more and more responsibility, even though that is not truly the city's responsibility. It is a county function. They are the ones that receive hundreds of millions of dollars from the state government for behavioral health, for social services, Department of Family and Children's Services, public health. All of those have historically been entrusted to a county. We stepped up as a city. This council stepped up as a city to do our part. Now, when those funds run out from the state, we're going to be less inclined to be able to do the things we've been doing. So we're going to be more and more reliant upon the county in the future, and we're having conversations with them about that. I will.
when you get a warning, when might you actually get a misdemeanor? And I was told that outstanding warrants might be treated differently at this point.
I'll try to remember all those things. You may have to prompt me again. But there's a couple different, we have our patrol officers who receive calls for service, a business that's having a chronic individual who maybe blocks their door, scares their customers away. The patrol officer may get that call. We also have our HEART PD team. The other half of that team is offer services. Our officers do as well, but they also help to mitigate the camps with sanitation. And that's all they do. So they're around the city 7 days a week. So both of those are able to contact individuals who may be chronic problem causers or are resistant to accepting services or accepting shelter, and we've done our best to get them help, or they're just chronically just causing problems. Arrest is an option for them. But if they're under the influence or they have some type of a substance abuse problem, then this option will be available to them. And then I'm trying to think what the rest of your question was. Yeah, so thank you. It's going to be a lot to the officer's discretion. We don't take that away in this situation, but we've given them options for when enforcement needs to be taken, options for when a person needs diversion services, options for when a person, just like the individuals I mentioned earlier in my example, they were just recently homeless and didn't know what to do. And so we just helped them into that emergency housing. So there's always going to be a wide array of options. We could also help someone get home to their family. If maybe they found themselves homeless in Fresno, but they have family down in Bakersfield and they want to make their way back to them, we can help them with all of that. And it's going to be always the officer's discretion. That's why, to me, it's so important that we train them not just on here are the mechanical pieces of this puzzle, but here is what we're trying to do, the culture that we're trying to create of helping and providing services. But when there's not an option to keep the peace, that we can take someone to jail.
Piggybacking just a little bit on that, you're training the officers, but to get this implemented, obviously you haven't trained them all, and how many have been trained?
Actually,
What does that training look like?
Can you make those training materials available to the media, please?
that'll be something to discuss offline. But almost all of our patrol folks have been trained, and then obviously our HEART individuals, that team has a deeper understanding of everything that goes along with homeless enforcement in the city of Fresno, and they have a lot more connections with resources available. So they're always available 7 days a week to our officers. And then I don't think I finished your question.
The mayor suggested that habitual offenders would potentially get misdemeanors.
Okay, I'll have to let someone else speak to the specifics of the statute beyond the arrest, because there are, I believe, penalties that range from a fine to incarceration and different things. The arrest will always just be on our part, the arrest for the ordinance, and then anything beyond that would be the purview of the city attorney or the courts.
The last thing was just about outstanding.
Those will be that's an order of the court. So those are not something that's discretionary for us in most cases. If someone has an outstanding warrant, then it could be cited if it meets the criteria for that, or arrested if it's a serious charge.
Council members suggested to me that those were going to be treated differently, that people weren't.
I can address that.
Okay, I'll let you do that.
And would be.
If I may, historically, the way we've operated for the last 4 years, I would point to Santa Clara and Belmont. Santa Clara gets cleaned up daily. Every morning we go pick up all the mess, send hazmat out there, and when we're done cleaning, within 30 minutes they're right back doing the same thing. We go back the next day, they do the same thing. When we do cleanups at Parkway, 40 people on a daily basis, our practice had been not to look at outstanding warrants. We simply were there to clean up the mess, take all the garbage, and then get people to move out for the moment, knowing that they're going to return back within the hour the next day. Now, what we're looking for is if you're not going to accept treatment, and if you're going to return back to the same location, if you're going to engage in the same behavior, then now you'll be able to be arrested. So we won't no longer give you the option of simply showing up to pick up your trash and let you return within the hour. You will have the option of entering treatment or going to the county jail, and we will be looking at all those outstanding warrants, because our goal for a long time was simply to house people. Now our shelters are full, and those that we're talking about, I mean, if 5 years ago, the same people in Santa Clara are there today. The same people on Parkway are there. They were there 3 years ago. They're there today. And there are folks who have repeatedly rejected any help and have gone through our shelters, but are now back out there because the outstanding issue is the addiction that they're going through. So we will no longer simply be facilitating their return, after we clean up their mess. They will be expected to move along. If not, they will be cited. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to what the mayor said about stepping up for the county. So the county has the expectation of implementing the care court system by the end of this year. Would you say the treatment first program is a bit of a stopgap until that goes online, or is the treatment first program including some sort of a long-term solution?
So our treatment first program is in addition to care court. There's a number of things that are on the horizon, as you all may know. Care court has to be implemented by the end of this calendar year. And care court, for those of you who don't know, is a methodology that allows for people to introduce someone into the judicial system through a petition if that person falls under the 5150 criteria specific to schizophrenia. And so that is going to be a piece of the puzzle in terms of a strategy. So we're going to still be able to do that as a city with our outreach workers. And as a matter of fact, a family member can petition to have a person brought into the care court. That is one piece of the puzzle. The other is SB 43 that was brought forth by Senator Eggman, which changed really strengthened the 5150 criteria in terms of definition, what constitutes that. And it allowed for substance abuse to be a part of that. And then we had Proposition 1 that passed as well that is going to be able to provide an additional 11,000 mental health treatment beds in the state of California, as well as some outpatient treatment, and about 30% of the money that would go to the county can now be used for housing. So all of those things collectively, with what we're doing, I believe over the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to see, we've had a lot of success on our streets in Fresno. We're seeing the numbers go down. I believe we're going to see those numbers even go down further and more dramatically as a result of all the things that we're doing in conjunction with the state and in conjunction with the county. Andrew Jans, you want to come up here? Thank you, Bruno.
Since these are municipal code violations, they'll be going through the city attorney's office, and I've instructed my team and my prosecutors to pursue these cases in line with what the mayor and the council have proposed in terms of helping people get services first. We're going to only use the hammer, which is the 1 year in county jail and the $1,000 fine for folks who habitually violate the law.
We already have a long-standing protocol where they get stored, and they get stored for a certain period of time, and they can access them at any time, and it's being stored for free.
I have Phil Sky speak specifically because there's a 60-day, there's a 90-day. It can get very confusing in terms of how long we store property.
Yeah, as Councilmember Arias and Mayor just said, our solid waste division in every instance is collecting anything that individuals cannot take with them that is personal property, that in other words is not combustible, that is not perishable, things that we can store. We store it on city property for 60 days. The individual that is, I assume you're asking as it relates to the unlawful camping ordinance, is that correct? Okay, so in the event that someone accepts treatment, or in the case where they are booked in county jail, they receive the information about where they can collect those items, along with an itemized list of everything that was collected and stored by the city of Fresno. And all they have to do is contact us with the information that's been provided them, and they can collect those items.
And then can someone lastly just speak to how yesterday looks different from today? Chief, you mentioned that there's not going to be sweeps happening, so what's different for patrol officers? Are they, if they run into a huge encampment, they're now going to be able to take action? How does today's ordinance differ from yesterday?
In many cases, I don't know that people out there generally will see a difference in terms of how our officers go out there day in and day out, or outreach workers, and are offering services. What you will see different is the tools available to that officer in the past when they have gone to a particular location, and if someone says, I'm not moving, I'm not leaving, they're really it puts some handcuffs on the officers and the outreach team. because there has been a reluctance to take those people in custody. So I think you'll see a change in that in terms of the fact that officers aren't going to drive away and just leave that person there, not to say that they would today, but in some cases maybe. So I want to have our chief speak directly to that.
So your question was, how does it look different yesterday to today? As Mayor said, not entirely different. However, our officers now, this ordinance has helped them to have the confidence to make a lawful arrest when the circumstances are proper. Again, as he said, it was a little ambiguous. If somebody refused from a public location, we really didn't have a lot of options. So those chronic problems that we believe, I know the council members up here get those phone calls from their constituents. We get them at the police department. They usually come over to us from council as well, just where these businesses or these neighborhoods just are not at peace because they're being intimidated. Businesses are afraid, their customers are afraid to show up. Those are the people we are really looking to help with this. And it might not be overnight, but as those calls come in and those particular individuals who are just chronically creating calls for service and fear in the neighborhoods or in the business districts, those are the individuals that now I think we're going to see the biggest difference, that we have a clear option with them. And it may be diversion, but it may be just going to Fresno County Jail.
If I may, Chief. Yes. The last point I'll make on this is a couple of our corridors across the city have been at the tipping point of becoming a skid row. Santa Clara, Belmont, even North Fresno, Shawls, canal embankments, train corridors. And the significant difference is prior to today, we as a city were relying on a small team of officers, homeless task force, to address these hundreds of encampments across the city. Now it's the whole police department's responsibility. Every policing district, every patrolling assignment across the city will be empowered with the same powers of the homeless task force to address these encampments. And so we should be able to visually, as a public, ensure and see that Santa Clara, Olive and Belmont and Herndon and Shaw and these canal corridors do not become skid rows. And that's the biggest difference for us, is we're now have a citywide approach to policing and enforcing the ordinance instead of relying on a small team tackling high priority areas.
Given that there's a deficit, how do you plan to pay for all this?
We're already paying for it. We funded the largest police department in the city's history, so they're well funded.
It costs more though, isn't it?
They're well funded to do their jobs. Going forward, the police officers will be doing their jobs citywide.
Yeah, so the Treatment First program doesn't come with any new additional revenue funding?
No, because we're relying on people like, there are a number of treatment providers that are out there today doing an incredible job. The Fresno Mission, the Poverello House, Comprehensive Addiction Program, the Salvation Army. We're going to take advantage of all of those with our Treatment First program, if treatment beds are available for them. And generally, as you heard Councilmember Maxwell say, we're going to get creative. We're going to find a way to make sure that treatment beds are available. And so we're going to ensure that people who truly want help, not just say they want help, and then they walk away from a program, but the people that want help, we're going to get them the help they need. So I do want to have Matt Dildine come up, because there's been talk about, other services and food and, people, not being able to pay rent. I do want Matt to talk about some of the services that are provided at City Center for folks.
Yeah, so City Center is a new campus that we're still kind of hopefully finishing here, the first phase in the next couple months. But already we have a number of services that are offered there. I think one of the most heartwarming, I think one of the best services that we currently offer is a free grocery store right here. One of the unique things about it allows for a free choice shopping experience. That's a partnership with the Central California Food Bank. But we also offer a number of other things at City Center currently right now. We have a partnership with Aspen Ridge, a charter school with a specialty in homeless foster youth. We also have a mental health care clinic in partnership with the Resiliency Center. We have a medical clinic in partnership with Family Health Care. There are youth mentoring services. People can get access to housing services as well there. We hope to, in the next couple months, to open up a very large crisis housing facility specifically for families and vulnerable youth. And then hopefully in the next year also opening up city studios, which offer permanent housing to foster youth and families. So.
Perfect. Where exactly is City Center?
At the center of the city. It's located at 2025 East Dakota. Yeah.
And if any of you haven't been there, I would ask that you do go there from the media. There's none like it in the United States of America. I promise you. You will be in awe when you get there, and you'll be in awe when you leave.
You're also welcome to go to Belmont and Van Ness and the Chevron. There's plenty of people you can interview who've been in shelters before and are continuing to engage in drug use in front of kids and don't care.
Amen. Last question right here. Thank you, Miguel.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, on topic of sleeping and being forced, one thing I couldn't really understand through the original ordinance was whether people sleeping in their vehicles would be pursued. Are they affected by this ordinance? Or?
Let me see if Andrew, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure.
It's a technical.
It might be a PD question. So essentially, the ordinance applies in areas that are public spaces, so like parks, areas around schools, like that. If you're sleeping in your vehicle and you're on public property, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a call by the PD, and they're going to have to make that decision to see if they're in violating the spirit of the law. They have the discretion in that circumstance, and I don't know if Chief, you want to speak more to that.
Yeah, that a lot of that will come down to, is the vehicle legally parked? Is it a broken down RV that's creating blight for the neighborhood and illegally parked? So I think specifically, I don't know if we're looking to target vehicles in this situation, but as we encounter them, we'll be making a case by case decision to see how it fits within the ordinance and make our best decision from there.
Just to close us off, I have a park in my district, Rotary Park. Huge homeless issue inside the park, but also in the parking lot. You have RVs, you have cars that have been broken down for weeks, if not months, and people living in those. I will be asking the police department that they enforce those as well, if we're able to. Good.
Well, thank you very, very much, everyone. I know it's longer than normal, but this is a critical issue facing our city, has been, will continue to be. And thank you all for being here. What's that? Good seeing you. Thank you for everything. Good comments.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Matt, great job. Thank you so much. Very good.